51 intelligence officials. And what people don't quite get with the 51 intelligence officials thing is that they were interrupting a presidential election in doing so. Meaning the email that was released pointed out, I think it was Brennan that got that email.
Yep.
I have a clip of it where he effectively said, hey, this is great because it's going to give Joe Biden a talking point when he's on the debate stage with Donald Trump, because Trump was going to bring up this notion that, look, the Hunter Biden laptop shows all of this corruption that is taking place by the Democratic Party. And so if we say that 51 intelligence officials come out and say that this isn't true, that this has the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, then we give Joe Biden a talking point when that comes up in the debate. And that is exactly what happened. It came up in the debate, and Joe Biden says, well, 51 intelligence officials says that that's Russian disinformation. Well, it wasn't. It was a true story that they were effectively lying about. What I'm trying to point out, though, is that is the intelligence services literally getting involved in order to undercut what one of the other presidential candidates was effectively saying and going after his opponent right here. So this is one of the emails that came up right here. So right here, leaked email. John Brennan to Michael Morrell. It says, okay, Michael, add my name to the list. Good initiative. Thanks for asking me to sign on. Michael Morrell sent, hey, John, can I add your name to the list? We'll be adding Leon, Sue, Gordon, Jay Johnson, George, Lisa Monaco, Mike Rogers today, and working on adding Dan Coates, Mike Rogers, and Tom Bossert, and a lot of other IC career folks. It says trying to give the campaign, particularly during the debate on Thursday, a talking point to push back on Trump on this. So you get John Brennan talking behind the scenes saying, hey, we need to be able to help Joe Biden in the debate. And the way we can do that is by getting all of these intelligence officials to lie that the laptop was Russian disinformation. They knew they were lying. They were just putting it out there in order to help one of the other candidates. Now, whether this was the CIA working specifically under the auspices of the organization, or whether this was a fifth column that decided to use their CIA credentials and intelligence credentials to do this, is less relevant to me. From my standpoint, they pulled a massive psyop on the American public on a debate stage, one of the largest watched debates or largest watched television appearances, especially in the political context, that you would see over the course of 4 years. They took that platform, that stage, to put out that disinformation. And when they put that disinformation out, if you remember, the New York Post gets put in Twitter jail. You get media organizations having a complete blackout for almost a year on that issue. And then they turn around and say, well, by the way, the story is true. And not just true, prosecutions start using the laptop to go after Hunter Biden. So it's like they lied. Now, Brennan and the other spooks have found a home on MSNBC, of course. And in finding a home on MSNBC, of course, Joy-Ann Reid, because as you pointed out, there is no moral or ethical core to the Democratic Party. They're a cult that is purely reflective to Trump. And so now they have spooks on MSNBC saying stuff like this.
Hillary Clinton was dragged through the mud, and in some cases, Republicans still complain about her having some C-marked material inside of the information in her inside of her server, the server that she had at home. There's been no allegation that she's ever disclosed or exposed CIA assets in this way, and it does seem that part of this is their sort of anti-DEI crusade. It doesn't make sense to me, if this is the plan, and we don't know this is why they are looking for this list, that you want to have only non-ethnic people in the CIA, that you don't want to have people with a background that is relevant to the countries that they're going to be working in.
Reid is talking about DEI programs. Effectively, Brennan is saying, hey, when I was in the CIA, I worked for diversity in the CIA. I guess my issue with this is more so they have gotten so thoroughly comfortable with spooks being on air And they give these guys this kind of credence, this level of, you know, they give this guy this level of credence associated with it. This is not where Democrats were. I don't think they've realized how far off the reservation they've gone. A party that used to be, I think Mark used to call it the cool party. They used to like pot. They used to be anti-establishment. They used to be against the wars. That used to be very skeptical of intelligence and spooks. I mean, keep in mind, spooks were the ones that were trying to get Martin Luther King to kill himself. You had people who believed that the CIA murdered Kennedy. Like, meaning you had a party or elements of the party that used to be skeptical to this stuff that now is establishment as establishment can be. It is bizarre. And I don't think they realize how far off the reservation they have gone to what a Democrat was versus whatever the hell a Democrat is now. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And if we look at what's happening, what the Democratic, again, it's not a political party. You know, something we were talking about a second ago, this octopus of regime change and neoliberal, neoconservative machine that USAID, the CIA, and the Democratic Party, they all have these work together, whether it's websites and news organizations and all of this kind of stuff, right? And the Democratic Party has just become an expression, the political faux political expression of that thing. You know, John Bolton writing articles, oh, everybody's got to vote for Kamala Harris, right? So the Democratic Party is the political expression of this kind of imperialist international regime change machine thing that's kind of being dismantled in a way, maybe not completely, but in a way it's being dismantled, but it's very, very dangerous. And I believe that the really, really rich people are bringing it to heel, that it ain't just Trump because they rub him out. But I do believe that a lot of the really rich people are saying that things gotten out of hand and it's okay if we use this to go after the poor people and the nobodies. But this is our dog, and our dog is not allowed to bite us on the ankles. And it started going after some of the wrong rich people, powerful people, going after Zuckerberg, going after Musk. It's going after the billionaires, and they're like, time out. We own this thing. The CIA was started by Wall Street. You think you're on your own. You ain't on your own, and you're getting ready to learn that because Trump couldn't take it apart. They'd kill him. We've seen that before. But the powers that be are taking it apart, and it's probably a good thing. And now it's being exposed for what it is. And man, the more you do, can I share something with you real quick?
Please,
I'm going to try to share something on the. Let me find it on the screen. Just an example, right? I'm going to put it there. You can.
There we are.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Look at this. See this? In 2020, when Tulsi Gabbard said she was running, remember that? And I said, "Oh, I'm going to go to Hawaii because I want to see, her announce." Right. So this experts who track websites and social media links linked to Russia have seen stirrings of a possible campaign of support. Right. You go down this.
So outrageous.
Watch this. Watch this. Oh, look at that. Because Lee Stranahan and I were talking, and I said, yeah, and we had a discussion. Yeah, Tulsi Gabbard's anti-war. She's going to shake things up a little. That's all we said. And I said, hey, I think it's good because she's going to shake things up. And immediately the machine came out and took that little thing, two schmucks on K Street with, how many people were really listening? Not all, but so many. We did the best we could. They took that and made an entire campaign about it to say the Russians have chosen Tulsi Gabbard, right?
That's so outrageous.
What was that? That was that machine. They didn't have much. They're like, what do we have to go after Tulsi Gabbard? We got some idiot on Sputnik said he likes her. That's all we got. Let's run with it. But the interesting thing was, that happened in like 24 hours. It was everywhere.
It was fast.
In Europe. It was in Australia. It was all. And I'm like, how did that? Well, now we see. This is what this machine is. I think some realities about it are being unearthed. And I think it goes to Congress if they keep digging way deep into Congress.
Oh, God, man, I hope they keep digging.
And if I was Trump, you know what I would do? I would sue every one of those, not just charge them. I'd sue every one of them because, legally, think about it. Particularly because of their expertise, right? But legally, their voice has a lot of weight, right? And when people are like, oh, well, the guy from the CIA, he said it, and they knew it. That's what they used. They used the weight of their expertise,
Yes, they
which
did.
means legally they have a right to do their due diligence to make sure that what they're saying is correct. You are using the fact that I am a former CIA leader. You're using that as weight to make what I'm saying credible with a minimum, no evidence. They literally, the article said, we have no evidence, right? Which means I have a legal duty to do my due diligence to make sure if I'm saying this, I better be able to support it. But we now know based on this, that the only due diligence they had was, hey, this will help Joe Biden.
Yep.
Now, let me add this. Donald Trump said, I was robbed. Doesn't he kind of have an argument now, a legal argument?
Oh,
that he
look,
was robbed?
I
And
thought
can he go back and sue everybody, the government, this guy has like $1 trillion lawsuit against the government because we can now look at it and say, there's pretty strong evidence that he was an attempt. Now, whether or not you can argue that he was or wasn't robbed, you can clearly see that there was an attempt made to rob him. And that all of those charges against him, what happens when they start digging into Alvin Bragg and the prosecutors and discussions between USAID, the CIA, and what was said to the prosecutors? And we find out, which we will if they look into it, that whole thing was orchestrated by the intelligence community. It's the greatest coup. Two preemptive coups. Both times they did a preemptive coup.
Yeah.
It is mind-boggling what they're unearthing here, man.
Well, I hope they keep digging.
Yeah.
I don't want them to do this in this kind of political bias way, but I definitely want them to keep digging. I want them, I find it to be outrageous. Donald Trump, if instead of him screaming fraud, he would have pointed out they changed the results of the election by effectively lying to the American public en masse on the debate stage. Because it's like, if the American public was given this kind of honest assessment of, yeah, Joe Biden was using his name for influence peddling, which is what Donald Trump was trying to make the point of, talking about the laptop and using a laptop as his justification for it. And you get these guys saying, well, look, we're part of the CIA. We're part of intelligence. All 51 of us are part of it. And based on our understanding and our experience, what Donald Trump's saying here is not true. That was the entire point of what they did on that debate stage when Blinken got all of those quote unquote intelligence officials to sign on to that letter. I'm saying that you're right. They did affect the results of the election by lying en masse on the debate stage with all of the other media organizations falling behind that particular lie over the course of the next year, even though they knew in 2019 that the laptop was legitimate. It's outrageous.
They had the laptop.
They had the laptop
for like 10 months. And they literally went to the press and went to social media and said, if anybody says there's a laptop and it's Hunter Biden and there's bad stuff, it's Russian disinformation. And you have to censor it, and we'd be happy to help you censor it.
I mean, the guy was showing dick pic.
And nobody had it.
It's like, hey, Hunter, is that your dick in that dick pic? Is that you having sex with that prostitute? Is that you on crack? Like, where did they think those images came from? Did they really believe that all of the images in that database were deep fakes? Like, they could have just asked them, hey, Hunter, is this yours? And obviously the answer was,
well, how about this? The only reason they got it, because a guy called the FBI from a computer shop and said, I got Hunter Biden's laptop. I keep calling him to come get it. He won't come get it. Will you come get it? And he had to call him twice.
Yep.
So they knew the origin of it. Did they go interview him to find out if he was a Russian spy? Apparently, they never suspected him of being a Russian spy. They had no connection between that laptop and anything else other than absolute truth. And they cooked up a lie. And they censored based on that lie. It is the word. And now we find out this thing. Oh, what a tangled web we weave, right?
One last thing, Kamala Harris. Now, I haven't seen this video, so I'll say it. But this is apparently one of the clips that they did not show. Because if you remember, Donald Trump sued the news organization, effectively saying, dude, you did an interview and you cut out all of these parts of the interview where that were less flattering. I'll put it that way for Harris. This is one of the clips that came up. I haven't seen this clip yet, so this reaction is going to be on the fly.
Madam Vice President, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. Good to be with you.
Can't hear if it's not very loud. Is it a way to turn it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You need me talking?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I can hear it.
Well, we were talking about how you're going to pay for it, and I mean, I truly do mean it. Your plans are logical, make logical sense. The way Washington works is not logical. So how are you going to convince a divided Congress that what you say, your plans, are something that they should all agree to and provide to the American people when they've shown no inclination to do that up to this point?
Is that what you needed?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
By the way, to interrupt real quick, not a horrible question, right?
No, that's certainly.
I mean, Mike, it's not horrible if you ask Donald Trump the same question, which for whatever reason, they don't ask Republicans questions like this. But like, hey, you have these ideas. Joe Biden had ideas. You're going to have to get this through Congress if indeed you're going to put it out. Meaning, if I say I'm going to put a man on Jupiter, okay, you could say that, but then you have to on some level explain how you're going to put the man on Jupiter. Kamala Harris's plans weren't that expansive, which is why I find this line of logic to be absurd. But whatever. You asked her the question, how are you going to get it through Congress? Let's hear Harris's response.
36 of sounds this room, John.
I can't even tell if she's speaking. Wait a minute.
His hands are moving.
Cameras are off.
How will you?
It's going to be taxes. It's going to be literally, if the economists, I mean, they're from each spectrum.
But I hear what you're saying
Yeah.
about the economists. This is true.
Yeah.
But Congress is not the economists.
I know, but
It sounds like either she didn't want to answer that question, because it seems like in silence, they were having this kind of behind the scenes conversation about how they were going to answer it. Eventually, she finally got the chance to answer. It was like, I guess she didn't really have a good answer for that
She
question.
didn't understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
it
it's
appears
like,
to you
how do
she
you
didn't
pay
really
for it?
understand the question. You know what I mean? Did she sound like kind of intellectually lost?
It sounds like she didn't want to answer.
We couldn't.
Yeah.
Economists, like
like,
she was looking for words, and you know what else? It sounds also like there was somebody in the background coaching her.
Yes, that's my point. When that silence, there's a part of this clip where they seem to be silent, but they're not really silent. Something is going on behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So how are you going to
Where-
convince a divided Congress
So right here,
that what
he
you
asked her the
say,
question,
your plans?
how do you get this to a divided Congress? Meaning, are you just telling people pie in the sky? Or do you have a real
Right.
plan?
It's a reasonable political question.
And let me see right here.
is that what you needed?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. 36 of sounds this room, John.
Yes, something is going on
You
behind
see
the
her
scenes.
turn, and then they just sit there.
It's almost like they must be saying something behind the scenes. Like
Yeah, yeah,
either they're trying to come to some detemination of whether she's going to answer
How
this.
will you?
Yeah,
And
see,
then you see
something
the
like that
person
happened.
walk by, and you see people moving around.
If the economists,
She's been coached.
I mean, they're from each
But I hear what you're saying
Yeah.
about the economists. This is true.
Yeah.
But Congress is not the economists.
Yeah, she's been coached. And she's like, well, the economists say so and so. Look, man, I could come up with a plan that economists love. He's asking her a different question. How do you get that to Congress? I guess that's my issue with this. Look, the question is legit, right? I guess my issue with this is if you're sitting there having a conversation with Donald Trump, are you going to ask Trump the same thing? How are you going to get this through Congress? Whatever that it is. I've never heard anybody ask Donald Trump, how are you going to pay for it, even though his plans balloon the budget, or how are you going to get this stuff through Congress? It never comes up.
Well,
That's the only issue with that question, right?
Yeah.
I'm fine with the question. The question is fine. Because otherwise you can say anything. I'm going to give people a $50 increase in their minimum wage. Okay, that sounds nice. How are you going to do that? Okay, don't worry about how I'm going to do it. That's what my plans are. Meaning you can come up with all sorts of plans. Everybody's going to have health care. Everybody's going to have a pony. Everybody is going to be able to go to the moon. for $50. You can say whatever you want to say. The catch becomes, okay, how do you get this through if indeed these are your plans? So I have no issue with the question, but the question should be universal to both candidates. And I've never heard that question asked to Donald Trump. Also, as you pointed out, it's a bit weird that she's being coached during the interview, as opposed to I ask the question, she gives me a response. I ask the question, she gives me a response. It's not that. He asked the question and then everybody paused and they seemed to have conversations on whether or not this was a question she was going to answer, finally coming to, okay, now you can answer the question after apparently somebody was talking to you in your ear. It's a very weird way to have an interview.
Does it give you, I'll put it like this, and here's the thing, I'll say this. Whatever questions they ask Donald Trump, you may not like the answers and they might not even make sense, but he gives you like a confident answer. And afterwards you might be like, oh, that's a crappy answer. But Trump, he says, let me tell you what we're going to do. And then he said something about the border and you're like, well, that's not related to it. But he's going to give, he's going to give you an answer. And it probably going to be about whatever the hell he wants to talk about. He's going to ignore your question, right? Which I can respect that because that's what politicians do. Yeah, come on, politicians have been doing that as long as there's been politicians. What was distressing about that was her inability to really understand, what she needed to do and how she needed to answer the question. She seemed confused. And the other thing was the coaching implied to me that they'd already talked to NBC and they'd already said, look, if she gets hung up, if she has a problem, we're going to help her out. And you guys got to be ready to cut and paste this thing as necessary. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. You wouldn't do that unless you already knew that NBC was working with you and that they were going to cut this thing and paste it as necessary. Otherwise, you wouldn't be wandering around the set in the middle of it. They're literally, you got a 60 minutes interview and people are wandering past the cameras. Why? Because they already know that it's going to be cut and pasted, but she was completely lost about it. It was a sad state of affairs. And I say this, they got to settle. NBC has to settle with Trump. They have no choice. And this is the issue. The issue is not the case. This is always the issue. The issue is discovery. What happens if Trump sues and he starts deposing these people, asking, at any time, did someone tell you that they would cut it up? And it starts, NBC, the court says we need every email. And they start getting emails that say, what are we going to do? How do we stop Trump? Well, how can we use this? Boy, she really screwed this up. We can't let this go because she'll lose. And we got to help her win. What happens in discovery if they start getting things that are so outrageous that NBC will be ripped to pieces? You know what I'm saying? So they have to settle it. You've got these people saying, why is NBC or CBS News settling with Trump? They should just fight it. They cannot allow the internal emails to fall into the hands of the prosecutors under discovery. A lot of people have settled lawsuits, and I've seen it where people have settled lawsuits, not because they thought they'd lose the lawsuit, but because under discovery, the things that would have come out would have been so embarrassing that it would be far more damaging to them as a news organization or as some or whatever. You might have some dirt that you've done. What I'm just saying, if you're being sued in your company that's so bad that you're like, crap, that'd be worse than losing a lawsuit. Pay the man. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the issue with and he can, man, the number of people that Donald Trump can sue now, if he ain't a billionaire, which I'm not sure whether he is or not, he will be when he gets finished suing all of these people. It's crazy. But it also, man, I am, what? I don't get shocked easy, but I am in shock over some of the things that I already suspected, but the things that you're seeing now, you're just like, oh my God. You know what I'm really shocked about? Let me ask if this is you. I think we might already covered it. Not that all this stuff happened, but I never thought it would come out. I never thought this stuff would come out. That's the shock.
The thing that has shocked me more than anything else was this focus on USA and the revealing of it. Everybody, meaning you and I and people who pay attention to this stuff knew that NED, USA, many of these NGOs were effectively getting money from the State Department to affect policy that the CIA would typically do. So instead of having CIA as the group or the power behind it, you can have these aid groups working almost as a proxy for CIA interests to overthrow governments and everything else. That was understood by a lot of people. Usually, though, that goes unspoken. That's not something that you usually say. It's impolite to point out that we were overthrowing governments and using these organizations to create color revolutions in countries that we didn't necessarily like in order to change those countries' policies. That was something we knew. It just wasn't spoken. The moment that Trump got rid of USAID, all of a sudden that stuff hit the headlines. And they started being very open and outspoken about the fact that this group has been used to overthrow governments. And you can look at what was happening in Georgia and those protests. We had a hand in that. You can look at the annulment of the Romanian election. We seem to have a hand in that. We can look at the overthrow of the Yanukovych government in Ukraine in 2014. We had a hand in that. Meaning this group, this quote unquote aid, has been going all throughout the world to affect the US policy, not just in overthrowing governments, but also using media in those countries to affect US policy. That is astonishing. It's not that they were doing it, as you pointed out, it's the fact that it was outed. They had to out it in order to even go at it in the first place, meaning you have to tarnish this thing in order to get rid of it. It's the fact that they were able to out the fact that we've been overthrowing governments and we've been using this device to do so. That is shocking.
I want to see the emails
That is shocking.
between CIA intelligence and the so-called intelligence officials that were like on MSNBC.
Yeah.
Like what was going back and forth between John Brennan and the Clapper and the guy Bash and all of these other people, all of those emails that were between them and various media outlets, the leaks, the New York Times, the etc. You know what I mean? What was going on? Because isn't it starting to get obvious that the same damn thing that was going, that they jumped the shark, they crossed the line, that it was now clearly Operation Mockingbird on steroids. And they were just like, okay, in the CIA, let's have a meeting. What do we want to go on MSNBC today? Nah, we'll put this on MSNBC. This goes to the New York Times. Yeah, but we got a story coming out in the Washington Post. How do we mix that with such and such? Send this to whoever, The View, whatever. I mean, we know it. It's clear it was going on now. It's pretty.
Yeah, they've had serious influence.
And how do you even do a church committee when this comes back? It'll rip Congress to pieces. It'll rip Congress to pieces. At least the Democratic Party, and probably the Lindsey Grahams and some of the Democrats, the Liz Cheneys, some of the Republicans that went. It'll rip them to pieces. How about if we find out what's the guy that they went after who was from that they Trump, one of the first people that Trump nominated, and
Flynn?
they said no this time, and they said he was investigated for having sex with an underage girl. Was it Matt Gaetz?
Oh, I know you're talking about Gates. Yeah, Matt Gaetz.
They start looking at intelligence and what have you, that was the operation against Matt Gaetz with the FBI and all of it. I guarantee.
Well, to be fair, Matt Gaetz, that stuff had been out there for a long time.
Exactly.
I mean, that's been out there for like over.
But I guarantee there was an operation. We got to stop Matt Gaetz, and the part of it was, you know what I mean? They were involved in everything. Pretty hard finding. I mean, no, I feel really happy.
I gotta be honest,
now.
man. I am here for this.
Yeah,
I don't like these people, and I definitely don't like the subversive nonsense of trying to affect. Because, and I'll end it on this. A lot of people may not remember this, but one of the last things that Obama did was to legalize propaganda to the U.S., meaning he legalized what it called Smith-Mundt Act, I believe it's called, that effectively allowed propaganda to be used against Americans on American soil under this idea of fighting disinformation from other governments. Okay, you just legalized lying to the American public. Now they would say, well, no, this has to do with Radio Free Europe, because that stuff wasn't allowed in the United States. You weren't allowed to have just raw, outright propaganda directed at the US government. Did they do it? Yes. Was it legal? No. It's legal now. And I think what we're seeing are the ramifications of Obama doing that. Keep in mind, laws are interpreted. It's not like somebody writes something down and that's just the end of it. It's this kind of flat, fat thing that the person wrote down. Oftentimes, those things are interpreted by the administration that comes in and the way that the administration operates. And if you interpret the Smith-Mundt Act as, oh, we can now propagandize to the American public, then that's what they're going to do. That's what Joe Biden did, and we'll see how Trump does it. But Trump has been more honest on a lot of this stuff, even though it's freaking people out. It's like, dude, the previous president was doing the same thing. We can end it on this. Give me your last take.
Boy, are the Democrats going to have egg on their face. Oh, my God. It appears that I think there's going to be prosecutions. Boy, I don't know what to say. You can see, you know me. I run my mouth all the time, and I'm left speechless.
I'm here for that. I'm here for all of this. I find this to be a reckoning. And no, I don't have this belief that Donald Trump is doing this for egalitarian reasons. I don't believe he's loving light. I don't believe any of that stuff. But something needs to fundamentally change. And the way that they engage with even media, the way they engage with the American public, something needs to change. We'll see what
Hey, they
comes
got
out
us
of it.
fired. These people got us fired. We had jobs that we enjoyed. We did a good job. We were honest. We did the best we could, and they
That too.
got us fired. And that was the machine that got us fired. I'm thrilled. I'll be getting a cup of tea and some popcorn watching these
Yeah.
people roast.
Garland Nixon, my man. Thank you for this, Garland. I always appreciate you coming on, man. I really do.
Thank you very
Garland
much.
Nixon, he is host of the Garland Nixon Show. He's on YouTube. Also, Garland is all over the place. Garland, where can people find you? Are you still on Twitter? My Twitter account has been destroyed. So if I don't,
They gave you the business too, most likely.
I still don't
gave you
have
the
it.
business.
And
No.
you can't contact anybody
Oh,
on it.
they gave you they took you out. Don't worry, I can get something's happening too. But yeah, they took you out. They took you out. That's all it was. It's the old come on, Twitter. Oh, we don't know who you are. It's not
aggravating.
plausible.
It is deeply frustrating, to put it mildly. But Garland, where can people find you? Just so people would know.
Just on Facebook, I'm there, and my I'm YouTube Rock Fan Rubble.
Okay. All right. My man, thank you for this, Garland. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Garland Nixon, the man, the legend. Love that guy.